go from there. So Toby has a couple of things. Josh, you can have a couple of things, and we can continue.
I have no slides, but I'm happy to answer questions or give a little introduction of what we do or whatever would be helpful to your students.
Sure. Okay. All right. That's great. All right. It is now 3 o'clock. So if everybody is on, it says we're live. So welcome everybody to the panel discussion, talking a little bit about specifically activities involving the DAIS department. We have with us, we anticipated on having 4 panelists. One panelist got caught in the weather, and who knew that they had weather in Houston other than hot? But anyway, one of our panelists is not able to make it. They are without power, without heat, without internet in the city of Houston. So Adam Warner from Mobil Exxon will not be joining us today. We have on our panel, we have Toby Barris from Zions Bank. We have Josh Burkino from the LDS Church. We are waiting, and possibly might join us in a minute, Mike Allred from IHC. And I have worked with all of these companies in the past, in my past history, particularly in their IT shops, as well as their some of their business organizations. And all 4 of these, now 3 of these folks that are going to be speaking to us today have some very, very interesting business activities. They have projects. They have really some interesting IT applications that they are rolling out for their organization. So it's with great pleasure that I'm looking forward to the remarks from each of these different organizations, and we'll talk to them a little bit and get some questions from the students a little bit later. But first, if we might, Toby, if we could maybe turn some time over to you to talk a little bit about Zions Bancorp and a little bit about what some of the things you're looking for as you recruit for some of your for some of the graduate students in our program. So Toby, let me turn some time over to you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so my name is Toby Barris, as was mentioned. I've worked for Zions Bank Corporation for about 7 years now. And if you're not familiar, like lots of people are probably aware of Zions Bank, but Zions Bank is actually part of a bank corporation, which is a collection of banks. And so we have several banks in the Western United States that covers our footprint, like California, Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, so also Colorado. But anyway, yeah, we have over 10,000 employees that work for Zions Bank Corporation across our footprint. And I work for corporate, and so I'm in the enterprise data science team, and we're part of a larger enterprise data analytics group, which comprises people that are working in data warehousing. We're doing actually in an effort right now to do modernization to go to cloud. So there's groups that are working on that effort. But yeah, there's also a business intelligence group that's primarily works around creating reporting. So all these efforts are around supporting the operations of the bank and providing answers primarily to the executives so that they know how to run our organization more efficiently and better. So yeah, as far as what we're looking for in candidates that apply, I do have a graphic that I'll share that I think that would maybe help, at least from a data science perspective, and I think it also has applicability into other analytics as well. So I'll go ahead and share that. Let me go ahead and share my screen here, and then I'll bring up this picture and drag it over. Okay. So let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Yeah. So this is your data science radar, and I'm not necessarily advocating Mango solutions, and you can actually sign up for this as a business to do this, but it's kind of an interesting way to think about in terms of, you know, what are the different areas of expertise that are needed to be a data scientist. And so you can see there's 6 different measures there. So, you know, you think about in terms of like, you got to be able to get data, you have to be a data wrangler. So certainly you could be specialized this exclusively and be a DBA or a person that an information analyst within the company that is creating, you know, data pipelines. But as a data scientist, you certainly need to understand SQL to be able to access whatever data sources there are in the business. So SQL, I would say, is a key skill that is like anywhere in the analytics department is a key skill. We use Postgres primarily. That's where our data warehouse is. So if you're interested, that's the kind of. But we also have Cloudera data. Cloudera is the Hadoop ecosystem that we have, and so you know Hive, certainly if you do Hive's queries, that's of interest as well. Then on the other side here, visualizer. So to be able to communicate a story, you know, with graphs or a report. This, you know, if you're a data scientist, you'd be using like libraries in Python, like Matplotlib or Seaborn. If you're an R, you'd be using something like ggplot. If you're a business intelligence person, you would be using things like ClickView or Tableau or Microsoft Power BI. So knowing how to use those kind of tools is a key thing. So you can put together either reports or, you know, visualizations so you can tell a story to executives and help them answer questions that they have. Down here in the lower right, programmer. So, you know, as a data scientist, knowing a programming language is really key. If you're more of a business intelligence kind of person, you know, the programming language is not as important, but certainly I think that, you know, you could find ways to make your job easier in any position that you have in the bank. So if you knew a programming language, so one thing that we do offer like is ongoing continuing education and upskilling people. And so, you know, a lot of people are learning about Python and R right now, you know, that don't necessarily have within Zions. And so, yeah, I think those would be the 2 languages that would be the most probably desirable at this point in time is Python and R. And I don't necessarily know like one is more than desirable than another, but that's probably the most I'll say about that. Over here on the left, modeler. So this would be strictly, I think, like for data scientists, you know, creating models, being able to understand like things like tree-based methods like XGBoost. We haven't found a lot of application yet for deep learning, but certainly that's something that we keep our skills up on in case we want to use that for the future. But yeah, we mostly do like either linear regression or techniques for, you know, for the continuous variables, but for like categorical, like that kind of modeling, tree-based methods are predominantly what we use. So. And then technologists there at the bottom, that's just keeping abreast of the latest technologies. I mean, some things that we're thinking about that, you know, of course, I mentioned like going to the cloud as a key thing that we're working on right now. That would be like, if you have those kind of skills, that would be a great thing to show on a resume. But being abreast of other things, for instance, tools that work with the cloud. I mean, for instance, if we were to go with like Azure or AWS, what are tools you could use to leverage and work with that kind of environment? I know something that we're interested in is tools like Databricks, for instance, would be something that would make, you know, data as a workbench that could potentially make a data scientist's life easier to see a model from inception through completion through the whole life cycle of the model. So just being abreast of like all those technologies. So that's the technologist area. And then at the top, I think is like this is communicator. This is like the soft skills. And I think this is probably the one that's the hardest because I don't know how you can really teach this, in a college course, but anything you can do to learn to be a good communicator. And this is different than like the visualizer over on the left. This is just learning how to have relationships with people in the bank. And I don't know how to maybe emphasize this more than anything is that when we're developing something, we're developing a product and we're developing it for a customer. And so to be able to go and interview that person, understand their requirements, that's really key to be able to get a good end result. And so being able to leverage those relationships and find out what's important to people really does have a big impact on the end result. So yeah, communication, those soft skills are something that are kind of an intangible thing that that could be a game changer for you to make your, have a better career down the road. So yeah, so those are just kind of high level, some of the ideas of what we think makes a good analyst or a good data scientist. So, but yeah, if you have any further questions about you'd like me to go deeper into any of those, but that's just kind of a high level overview. So.
Thanks, Toby. That was outstanding. As a matter of fact, as we look at trying to coach our students in the area of data analytics, it's really a wide set of skills that is required because you have to understand obviously the technology, the programming languages, the databases, the regression analysis, as well as a lot of organizations are saying you need to understand the business, the what you do in the business. So in your case, Toby, it would be banking, it would be financial transactions. What do you do? How do you use your data so that you can then construct some useful analysis surrounding that? So there's a lot of tools, and I would agree with you that communication piece is very, very important. So to be able to demonstrate that is a very useful skill. So that's great. That's a great, and that would be great if we could have maybe a copy of that. If you could get that to Steve Larson, because I think that identifies some of the areas, some of the skills that everybody's looking for as they go to hire it. Thank you, Toby, and I'm sure people will have some more questions later. Let me introduce to you Josh Burkino. He works for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they are one of the huge consumers of data, not only in the state, but worldwide. I mean, they have, if you can think about that, they have operations in most of the countries in the world, and they have to communicate with those folks, collect data, collect information, and many times do it in not only according to in a foreign language, but you have to do it according to the local rules and regulations. So really a very complex operation that Josh will be talking about. So Josh, if I could turn some time over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Yeah, as Steve pointed out, a lot of people in the world may not understand the complexity of the church's information technology demands, right? The demands of the church's business on IT. But it's true. We have operations going on all across the globe that requires multiple on-prem data centers, multiple cloud deployments with various vendors, thousands of employees, tens of thousands of employees, thousands of user accounts, endpoints, you name it. So what that means for information security, which is where I work, is a lot of complexity, a lot of different technologies to understand just enough to be dangerous, and a lot of investigations that require some local adaptability and sensitivities, right? Because we're dealing with regulations, privacy laws, and sensitivities around the globe. So thanks for that introduction. I'll introduce myself. I'm Josh Burkino. I've worked with the church for about 5 years. Before that, I worked in signals intelligence with the federal government. So it was a bit of a career change, actually, for me going into information security.
Which agency in the federal government?
I was with the Department of Defense, the National Security Agency.
Gotcha.
So let me give a quick introduction for my field of interest, which is information security. So at the church, we have a division for information security that covers things ranging from governance, risk, and compliance, all the way to some more technical capabilities like my team provides, which is security operations and incident response. So my team is a team of 23 people at the church that provide around-the-clock coverage for monitoring and responding to information security incidents in the church's global IT environment. So we're monitoring for things like network intrusions in a church data center or a network somewhere across the globe. We're monitoring for account compromise, where church employees or leaders' accounts may be compromised so that a threat actor may access information, right? We also coordinate special investigations. The church, being as large as it is and complex as it is, sometimes requires legal, HR, and audit investigations that require forensics. Our team provides those capabilities. And then we also provide partnership with other church entities that don't fall under headquarters scope. So the church is a large organization with all sorts of different affiliates and entities, like higher education with the different universities, some of your rivals, hopefully. And others. So we coordinate with those teams as well and support them in their information security activities. So that's what we do. It's very specialized. Some companies you may interact with, their security team is very small and they're jack of all trades. The church, we have the blessing and the curse of having a large information security division that leads to specialization. So what that means is my team tries to be very good at the narrowly defined scope of responsibilities we have, which allows us to go deep, but also sometimes prevents members of my team from becoming as well versed in other aspects of the information security, multiple domains, if you will. So we have teams in our division that focus on communicating and understanding business risk and business IT risk and how to work with different business units to mitigate risk with good information security practices. We have other teams that focus on penetration testing. We have other teams that focus on vulnerability scanning and management. My team, like I said, is very focused on technical analysis and remediation of threats. And then what I said earlier about, we have to know enough about, a variety of different technologies to be dangerous. Something to think about with security is we always feel a bit like imposters. We are responsible for providing security for all sorts of different IT solutions, which means we can't be experts in any one of them usually. Most security professionals are, think of themselves as jack of all trades, masters of none. So a big important part of my team's role is to be good communicators and partners. When we're having an issue with a server environment or maybe with a specific application or a cloud environment, we are going to focus on good security practices and incident response procedures to investigate and respond. But we're going to bring in those technologists who are experts in those areas to partner with us as we try to focus on the ultimate goal of protecting church data. So it's something to keep in mind if you're considering a career in security is you can go deep in security topics, but I guarantee you're always going to feel a little out of your depth when talking some of these technologies with the true experts. So let go of that drive to be an expert, to be an expert in everything, and try to focus on being an expert in good security practices and then being a partner to those IT teams that are trying to solve complex problems. I'm happy to discuss other questions or other discussions of how we hire, how we interview, what skills we look for, anything else, but I think that's a good introduction for the area that I can represent.
And let me just follow up with a quick question for you, Josh, and that is, I know a lot of, and it doesn't look like Mike Allred is going to be here, but and he might have touched on this, but in the area
Steve,
of security.
I am here.
Oh, okay.
I'm here.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Then I will. I'll let you emphasize this a little bit more. But let me pose a question to Josh to start with. That is, I know a lot of companies are looking as part of their security umbrella. They're looking at integrating more data analysts, data scientists, looking at anomaly detection, looking at predictive analysis and so forth. Are you folks involving some of those data analysts into your security environment?
We are looking to do so. So like you just said, a lot of organizations are trying to get smarter on how they detect threats, right? So my team's focused on, if a threat's been detected, what do we need to do to analyze it and respond? However, my team can be as great as we can be at analyzing and responding to threats, but what if we're not looking in the right place? What if we're not seeing those anomalies, things like that? So absolutely, many security teams, ours included, are looking into how can we incorporate better data analysis practices, right? Statistical analysis to understand our data, where the anomalies may be, try to use heuristics and behavioral kind of analysis to try to get ahead of the attackers. So absolutely, we're looking to integrate that. In the church today, the way we're structured, it would be teams that support and work with mine. My team is still today focused on, once something's detected, what do we do about it?
Thank you. Thank you, Josh, for that piece. There's a lot of folks that a lot of our students are involved in security, and so it's great to hear what sort of emphasis you're looking for as they try to construct their skill set. So thank you for that. Welcome, Mike. Appreciate you being here. For those of you that are on the YouTube presentation, Mike Allred is. I've known Mike for a number of years, and I've also known his company for a number of years. It is IHC, and they do some just really fantastic stuff. They are in the healthcare industry. Obviously, most of the folks are aware of that. They are one of the bigger employers in the state. But they are, IHC is growing tremendously. And Allred's specific view is some very interesting things with. I'm going to turn some time over IHC and some of the things that you guys are doing.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, Steve and I have known each other for a number of years. It's nice to work with him again. So let me just, can I share out my screen?
Yep, go ahead.
Let me just share. Some of you may have seen this, but this is the largest employers in every state. And you can see that Intermountain is the largest employer in the state of Utah. Interesting how many states Walmart's the largest employer. I don't know what that means, but we are the largest non-government. I think Hill Air Force Base actually may be the largest, mostly just because of the military people going in and out of there. But we're the largest employer in the state of Utah, and we do go.
That's correct.
Yeah, private employer. Yeah, and oops, what am I doing in that meeting there? Let me go back to the Zoom meeting. So I just wanted to share that and give you a little perspective. We have about 40,000 employees in the state of Utah, and all the way from Logan to St. George. And as Steve mentioned, we've recently expanded into the Nevada market. So we purchased a company out of Las Vegas, and so we've expanded into that market. And also recently purchased a company called Salser in Boise, Treasure Valley area. So Intermountain's growing. after being pretty much a Utah-based company for years, we're expanding into some other markets and expect to see that continuing at some pace. I don't know what that pace is, but and also, as you can imagine, looking at positions, our largest group of employees are nurses, right? I think we have 8,000 to 10,000 employed nurses at any one time. And of course, student nursing is a big thing, but so there's a large number, so when we look at the IT side of things or the technical side, we have almost 1,000 IT type of employees. And then we also have a data analytics department that's separate from our, what we call CTIS, which I'll talk about more, but the data analytics department is really responsible for data analytics around patient data. I mean, they do a lot of different things, but they're really looking at patient data, and we're really kind of a data-driven company with the idea that, we really want to be science-based, and that when we're looking at drugs or we're looking at procedures or we're looking at anything, it's really about the outcomes and does this procedure get the outcomes that are expected? And so from a data analytics perspective, and I really like Toby, and he talked a lot about technologies I had heard of, but I can't say I'm an expert in any of those. I know most of those names and that, but I'm in the cybersecurity area. And, I have a peer similar to Josh, who's over our secure operations center. I'm over the identity and access management area. And a lot of people think that's kind of the boring area of cybersecurity because, when Josh interviews somebody, he's talking about stopping attackers and doing investigations. And my team doesn't do that. My team really is about how do people get access? How do we manage those accounts? And when you think about the end of the day, my boss, the CISO, he's always saying that identity is the heart of cybersecurity, because if you're trying to break into anything, what are you trying to do? You're trying to take over an account, trying to escalate your privileges, get a privileged access. And if you read any of these attacks against companies that have been so well publicized, almost all of them are, they were able to get a weak password, or they're able to break in and get, through a phishing campaign, get a one person's position and then escalate that up to take over till they get to that Active Directory domain admin or that DBA admin account. So a lot of times, we think about, those privileged accounts, and we do protect those, but really we have a lot around just account management, making sure people get terminated, making sure passwords are secure, making sure we have, we call it two-step, but multi-factor in place. And that's a lot what my team does from a protection of data. Also along that line, and I'm sure that the church in Zions is doing this as well, we're getting into user behavior analytics. And so really trying to figure out, what is this user? Do they look like what they always do? So if you suddenly log in at 2 a.m. from New York and you've never done that before, that's unusual behavior. And the hard thing is figuring out what's normal behavior. but once you get that, then you can get into this unusual behavior. And that's really where I think data analytics, data scientists, machine learning, all those things in the cybersecurity world are really going to be around detecting anomalous behavior and things that just don't look right. And then they would go to a SOC analyst to look at. And that's what we do, is we trigger events to our secure operations center to say, hey, this looks like it needs to be investigated. And then somebody, spins off and looks at that. So that's kind of a high level. I'm going to bring up one other to share this screen. Hopefully it's not too much sharing, but I want to show. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this again. Let me just bring up. I hate when Zoom overwrites things here. So this is our security. I just wanted to kind of lay this out. So I'm over this identity team, but we have the SOC, the detection and response team. We have the GRC team. we have an insurer, a payer arm that's called Select Health, you've probably heard of, but we have a payer side. We have the secure operations side. We have a forensics and e-discovery side, and then an architecture side, and then a business continuity and disaster planning. So we've broken this into these teams. And just so you know, when if you're looking for a role in cybersecurity, honestly, some of these teams are pretty small. There's not a lot of people doing forensics and e-discovery. Again, it's kind of a lot of people like this vulnerability assessment, kind of the red team trying to go against maybe the blue team, which would be your SOC or whatever. Very small teams. And if you look at the 70 plus security people that we have, I actually have one of the larger teams. The SOC's pretty large. But a lot of these other teams are actually quite small. So just I wanted to bring that up as you're looking at careers, maybe in cybersecurity. I'd love to have more people with data analytics skills coming into cybersecurity, because I think that's really where cybersecurity is going, and kind of combining those two disciplines of a data analytics person and a cybersecurity person that understands that. I think you could have a great career in that. And from a data analytics perspective, I talked about our data analytics department. They actually split off people, so they have like data analytics people that work in HR, data analytics people that work in pharmacy, data analytics people, they work in different business aspects. They're all in the one department, but they actually work on, like HR analytics, or they actually work on pharmacy drug analytics. And so again, as you're looking at your career, deciding which way to go, I think some of those things Toby brought up were so right on. Look at those communication skills. I always feel like, in fact, I've had such a hard time hiring people into cybersecurity. I more look for people that can learn and grow and turn into a cybersecurity person. I can teach a lot of that skill. It's harder to teach good technical skills and get that technical experience. And I've been willing. One of my best employees is actually a nurse. He came up through nursing, has his bachelor's degree in nursing, and it's really good because he understands the caregiver side. He understands, hey, when we implement something, that affects patient care. And so, I look at kind of a broad range of degrees and experience to select people, and really looking for people that are kind of driven, that want to work hard and learn and grow. And those are the type of people that I found to be, successful at Intermountain. I think that's kind of the main things. Hopefully that gives you kind of a broad range of the type of people and skill sets that we're looking for. So
that's great, Mike. Thank you. That's a great overview. And one of the common themes that comes out of these discussions when you talk with employers are, there's a real need for technical expertise. There's a real need for communications. And there's also a real need for understanding the business environment. So as you just said, somebody who came out of nursing, because you're in the healthcare industry, it is very, very important for them to understand the data that they're using, the security controls that you put in place in order to protect the information that you have stewardship over. So great background from everybody. We have a few questions that are coming in, but before I get to the questions from some of our students, what I would like to maybe ask each one of you, each one of the panelists here, and you can think about this for a minute, but what is the most enjoyable thing about working for your organization? What is it that you would pitch to potential new hires as a reason why they would want to come and join your organization? So Toby, maybe you could start and give a little bit of a pitch for the Zions Bancorp environment.
Yeah, that's a great question. As I think about my tenure here at Zions it's been great, and I think the reason it's been great to me is because I've seen that I've been able to make an impact, and with the work I've been able to do as a data scientist. A couple of examples come to mind. One is that we actually are doing some of the stuff with the data science related to fraud that was talked about just a few minutes ago, and we're actually doing that, and we actually have spun off and have a fraud data science group now. But when we were kind of combined before, I actually did a wire fraud model, and actually seeing your model prevent like wire fraud from happening is very satisfying, and it helps you to know that those kind of things are real, and it's cool that you can stop it. Another thing that has been very satisfying is that I feel like that Zions really does care about the communities that we're in, and one of the examples I've seen with that is with the Small Business Administration Paycheck Protection Program as part of the COVID relief. Zions is, if you look at our size of our business, we're about the 40th largest bank in the United States, but we were able to get like the eighth largest number of loans for this SBA PPP protection program. So we punched above our weight, and a lot of that is because of the efforts of the analytics organization making that happen, because we had to literally create a system to be able to ingest those applications and then turn them around. As a data scientist, I was able to help out with an assignment algorithm to help to figure out who would be the right officer to assign, applicants to. And just to see how that's impacted people, we've had lots of stories come back and people talking about how they were going to be a Zions Bank, customer from here on out because they felt like we cared, and they were just amazed that how we were able to help them in that paycheck protection program, to get that loan for them, and how it saved them. And you just realize that, I come from a family that my dad was a small business owner. I know how financing can help out a small business, and so it's interesting to be on the other side now and have that satisfaction that you're helping these businesses and their communities. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the best pitches I could give for the bank.
Thanks, Toby. Josh?
I've always been a mission-driven kind of guy, so I enjoyed working, before I worked for the church, for supporting a national security mission that was important to me. Working for the church, right, as a believing member of the Church of Jesus Christ, and I'm really driven by the opportunity to support what I think is an important work, right, and to try to, in some small way, support what I believe would be the work of God. And I get to do it with cutting-edge technology, enterprise-level solutions, and very complex problems to solve. So I get to do exciting stuff at scale for a really good cause, I believe.
Thank you, Josh. Mike?
Yeah, so Intermountain's motto is helping people live the healthiest life possible. You may have even seen it in some of our advertisements. And we really live that. And that's what I like, is we really try to help the local people live a healthy life through programs. And we're really big in kind of changing healthcare. I think all of us see the news, hear the news, and they talk about healthcare is not sustainable. The large portion of the cost of our economy, and Intermountain's really trying to go about changing that. And so we're in on that ground level. I talked about that CTIS. That's our IT organization. It stands for Care Transformation Information System. So we have doctors, nurses working in our IT organization trying to change how healthcare is provided. And that's really exciting. It's exciting to be on the cybersecurity side, something I just have a passion about, cybersecurity, but it's really pretty cool to be part of a, primary children's hospital and just this healthcare organization that's really trying to help people. And boy, if you want to hear some great stories, go talk to an ER doc and just the passion they have for saving people's lives. It's really pretty amazing. So.
Thank you, guys. Great testimonials. I appreciate that. And I think everybody can feel the passion of the work that you do. So thank you for that explanation. We got a couple of questions here, And so I'm going to go through the questions. And for those of you, part of this would be Toby, part of it would be Mike, maybe Josh, you can look at this. One of the questions that's been posed is, do you separate data engineers from data scientists in the area of data analytics? Are they separate groups, or are they just different skills within the same group?
I'm happy to take that question. I mean, but if someone else wants to go first, that's fine too.
Sure, go ahead.
So I would say that it's a little bit of both. There is a different group that has engineering, and we work very closely with them. What's kind of interesting though is that sometimes that group has different priorities than what we have. And so we've actually have some people within our group that have some of those engineering skills. And so there's times when we just have to, out of necessity, just to get projects done, we'll get it done. But I think in a perfect world, we would, be able to get those resources from the other group and make that, just utilize them when we needed to. But in practice, we actually have to do some of that ourselves. So it's kind of a combination of both.
Okay, that's great. Mike or Josh, how do you separate those?
Yeah, my team that doesn't have a lot of data scientist background. We'd probably be more in an engineering group, just not that we want to do more with data scientists, but we work very closely. One of the projects we have going on right now with our data analytics department and their data scientists and engineers is trying to figure out role-based access. How do you provision users based on data, and using that machine learning and some data analytics capabilities to build roles automatically to say, oh, this is a NICU nurse at this facility. They need these 12 things to do their job. And so I don't know that I separate them, but they are separated by kind of formal structure, I guess, to some degree. So.
Very good. Thank you. Here's a great question for all of you, and that is, how do you define your team's success? Josh, why don't you go ahead and start with this one?
Sure. So some teams and frankly some executives I've talked to at other companies mistakenly believe that a successful incident response program or security operations team means that company will never have incidents, compromises, and that is not true, right? You need to go into this with your eyes wide open and understand that attackers are going to find ways around your controls eventually. A successful, information security incident response program seeks to limit how often that happens or what the attacker gets access to or has time to get access to once they get in, and then to have an effective response to mitigate damage, right, and minimize damage and impact. So it sounds a little bit like admitting defeat early on, but the reality is a successful team in my world is one that can quickly jump on indicators of compromise and quickly contain the spread of malware or of other malicious activities, and then help the business recover as quickly as possible.
And that's so true, because it's kind of like a game. It keeps escalating. Security professionals and security hackers, there's new tools, there's new things that keep coming out. And so the idea is to be able to not eliminate it entirely, but be able to put enough controls and be able to respond quickly. So very good. Mike, how do you define success?
Yeah, we struggled with, what are the key performance indicators, KPIs that management wants to measure us by. And it's kind of hard in cybersecurity, Steve. I remember back working in the state, we blocked 100,000 events at the firewall. Yeah, that's just, like saying you're going 65 miles an hour, but are you on the interstate or are you in a school zone, and so sometimes management likes those big numbers that just are hard to define what they mean. Are we really doing good or not? because as Josh was kind of saying, it's unknown things that got through that you have to respond to. And so, yeah, so, a lot of ours, we try to get management to pay enough attention to tell us what's important to them. And from an access, a lot of it is just that when I hire a new doctor, can they start working the day? We're paying that guy a lot of money, that person a lot of money. Can they start working on day one? And when they don't, boy, there's a lot of loss, can they see patients? And just to give you a kind of a funny example. So we changed our password policy to be a little more characters, a little more strict. And I had a doctor actually meet with me and explain that he'd done an analysis. He, for years, for whatever reason, had a 4-character password, which was probably doc or something, And so when we went to 8, he had actually done an analysis and showed me on a big spreadsheet, like he put a lot of thought in this, that he was actually seeing one patient less a day. And so he had it down to, you're costing me X number of dollars a month by changing your password policy. And I wanted to say, well, you spent all that money on figuring this out, but different story. But sometimes it's hard to know, we put these security things in place that affect patient care or performance. And we have to always weigh that against what the purpose of who you're working for. Our purpose is to provide patient care. So it's always trying to say, okay, we're measured, really, can that doctor perform patient care? So.
Yeah, it's kind of like in the area of security, the most secure database is one that's never accessed, right? The problem is in business, you have to access it. So that's a trade-off that you always got to look at. So great example. Thank you, Mike. Toby, how do you define success?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways that we do that within Zions. I know the one thing that our management is always asking us about is what our OKRs are. So, I mean, that's what we're doing here, objectives and key results. But I think it's become a little bit easier since we've started doing safe agile. And a lot of that's just because we're making sure that, whatever, there's like the portfolio layer, which are the epics that are being defined. So the work that's being defined is being driven from the top. So in other words, whatever work funnels down to us is aligned with whatever the executives want us, the projects they want us to work on. And so then it becomes pretty easy that, for each feature that you work on, there's always a definition of done, so the things that you can say that you're done with that, so you can measure success by closing out the work that you've been assigned. And then that if you do close it out, that it's going towards being completing projects that the executives want you to do that are part of their strategic initiatives. So yeah.
Very good. Here's another question. This is an interesting question. As students come to apply in your organization in the area of data analytics, in the area of information security, in the area of information systems, what certificates do you look for? Are they required or are they nice to have? So maybe we'll go back and start with you, Mike, and then go through Toby and Josh. Mike, what do you? I know we've had this conversation about certificates. Yeah. Do you require them, or is it nice to have? So
initially, we had required, depend on the level, right? So our more senior staff, we required like the CISSP, which is kind of one of the highest levels within cybersecurity. What we found is the people that had it, we couldn't afford them because they wanted more money than they're willing to pay, or they just didn't apply. That kicked so many people out. And so I pushed hard to change our job classifications to make it as extra points kind of thing. So if you had it, you would get more credit and get more likely get an interview versus just kick you out. For entry-level positions, which most of the college kids will be coming into, that what we call an associate level or a staff level. Again, we don't require a certificate, but Security Plus, if you're coming in and want to be a cybersecurity person, having that baseline, okay, I understand the basics of cybersecurity. I think that's a real plus. I look at those. I have a scoring mechanisms that I use, and that's one of the things that I grade up on is, you know, do you have a college degree? Do you, and I've actually found, you know, got some people that don't have college degrees that are awesome. And that's nothing against a college degree. It's just, you know, there are people that college isn't their thing, but they really turn into great IT people. So I've tried to give more credit to somebody with a college background and a certificate, but it's not a limiting thing as well. So.
Great, thank you. Toby?
You know, I can't really speak from the security side of things. I would imagine they probably want some type of certificate, but at least from a data science perspective, I don't necessarily think that there would be any certificates that would be required to be considered. I think that certainly, I mean, we're looking. I've talked with those above me, and I think that what we're looking for, if you're like coming from like a computer science background, can you prove that you have like the math and the stats that would back that up, so that you know actually know how these algorithms work? Vice versa, if you're coming from like a math stats background, can you actually do some programming? You know, so I think that as long as you have like some type of experience or, you know, coursework that can prove that you have those kind of skills, you would be considered, regardless of if you have a certificate or not. So.
And probably part of what they would be demonstrating is their, as you mentioned, their SQL capability, their Tableau, their Python, their various technology skills that they would want to demonstrate.
Exactly.
Okay, Josh?
For our entry-level positions on our teams, certifications are definitely not required. We can debate about whether or not they're advisable as a quick way to tell a recruiter kind of what you've done, or tell a hiring manager. What I'd say we care about though are the skills, right? So I care about, do you have a general kind of fundamental level of skill in, you know, OS basics, networking fundamentals, security fundamentals, and then almost most importantly, can you piece those things together to solve problems, right? Can you lean on your technical depth, as it were, in those areas to try to solve some complex problems? So, you know, we get people from all sorts of backgrounds. Some people are more CS backgrounds, some are information systems. I think the unifying factor for all of them is they have some technical depth, they're able to learn quickly, and they're able to apply what they know to solve problems.
Very good.
I think, Josh, you hit on a big thing, is that problem solving skill. I think if there's anything you can get from college and is being able to put those things together and solve problems. I'm just amazed how many people can't, but really being able to be a problem solver, because a lot of it, whether you're in the SOC or our team, you're really trying to solve complex problems. So.
That's so true. Great comments. So the next question is, do you have ongoing education programs, either for skill sets within your area or to learn more about the business? You know, to take financial transactions, learn about the banking industry, learn about the health industry, or is it, do you have ongoing education for specific computer skills, security skills? Toby.
Yeah, Zion's, we approach that in a couple of different ways. We have a learning and development center so if you wanted to learn about banking or if you wanted to become a manager, there would also be management courses that are provided there. From a technical perspective, we have like contract with Pluralsight. So if you want to learn about Python or something like that, you can learn to your heart's content there. So.
Very good. Josh?
Yeah, so the church does have programs for employees for supporting education as well as technical training. You know, we partner with some in information security. We partner with companies like SANS to provide some, you know, really top-notch technical training to church employees. More applicable maybe to entry-level folks or folks going into contingent contract roles, things like that, we have a lot of internal training developed on my team specifically, and other teams, saying not just about what we do, but also we've tried to develop internal training about the realm of security operations and incident response. That's actually a key part of my team's operations, is that continual learning, development, training, and then application. So I'm not sure if that's what the question was looking for, but we have all sorts of training opportunities.
Great, thanks. And Mike?
Yeah, so Intermountain, so Intermountain, has a lot of training programs, including, tuition reimbursement. So, a lot of that, you think about a lot of healthcare people, in order to keep their certificates and be able to, perform patient care, have to get so many hours of credits each year. And so they do have a reimbursement program. We also we don't have Pluralsight, but we have some other things that we've contracted with throughout the years, that if you want to learn Python, the biggest problem I see with those is you're doing it after hours, and people don't always like to do that because they're so busy during the day. That's always been my problem. But we do encourage that. When you talk about certifications, we'll actually sponsor and help you get those certifications if you're interested. We used to say you had to get it in so many years after getting hiring, but we found some people just don't like taking tests. And so those that want to, we do have some programs to help you get your certification, and then we do, similar to Josh, we have internal to each team, have some different things. We also, in cybersecurity, have a mentor program. So if you start out on one team and you want to go to the other team, you know what that team does, and we try to do some internal hiring between teams as people leave, just to give people a broader perspective of cybersecurity. So,
excellent. We got a couple of minutes left, and I'll wrap up with a question after this one. But interesting question. This is more into the details, but the question deals with ransomware. One, do you deal with it? And two, how do you deal with it? Do you have policies in place? And how do you address the issue of ransomware within your organization? So, Josh, we'll start with you. I know that due to your previous background, you probably have some experience with it.
Well, actually, more so in my current role. I won't go into too much.
Really?
But
Okay.
The church, just like all these other organizations, yes, we have to deal with ransomware. We worry about it. We may be the victims of it from time to time, things like that. And the big focus is, what preventive measures do you have in place? So do you have, top-notch and up-to-date anti-malware, antivirus programs on your endpoints, especially your sensitive ones, that hopefully will detect and prevent common signatures for ransomware early on? Do you have good data backup and restoration policies in place, right? And then, of course, as always, do you have a solid incident response plan where if there is an outbreak in your environment, can you get a team on it to quickly and effectively understand where it's spreading, do segmentation and quarantining to isolate the spread, and then you can initiate some of those backup and restore procedures you have in place. So those are big things that come to mind. There are some companies out there that are starting to specialize in how to be intermediaries with the attackers and actually pay them off, things like that. I don't want to discuss that philosophy too much, other than to say I don't really understand it. But
Got it. Mike.
Yeah, so, similar to what Josh is talking about, my team, his team probably deals with more from an incident response, but we do a lot with the phishing programs. We really try to train and educate, because that's where a lot of the ransomware comes through the door. Is, we really try hard to educate people on phishing, not to fall for them. And it's hard. Phishers are getting better and better every day. The other thing from an incident response that's been kind of interesting is how to deal with partners who have a ransomware attack. So these are partners where you've outsourced a service or you're contracting with, and then they have an outbreak. And we've had a couple times just shut everything down for days, and it could be financially burdened to both them and us, but we just don't want that ransomware spreading. And so, so that's not just internal, but also how do you deal with your partners that may have a problem? So.
Excellent. And Toby, do you have that's not your particular area, but has Zion's Bancorp, have they had that as an issue at times in the past?
I'm not aware of any times we've been subject to a ransomware attack, but that's just because I'm not really on the IT side of things. But
sure,
I would say that we've tried to be proactive because certainly is of concern to us as a financial institution. That's our main source of I guess being a business is protecting people's information. So we don't want to have that subject to people extorting us for that. But yeah, the way that we're being proactive is just exactly what Mike was just talking about. We have active campaigns to help people to not be susceptible to phishing attack. I mean, that's our main weakness. And so that's where we help people to know how not to click on that link or whatever to get the ransomware to download.
That's great. The last question is, as we're getting close to wrapping up here, is can students connect with each of you on LinkedIn? Would that be possible? And would you make that available to folks if that is acceptable?
Yeah, I would.
And if you can, you could just post it to the chat, and or you can send the information to Steve Larson, and he will make it available to everybody on the call here.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. As long as they put something in there. The only people I try not to do on LinkedIn is recruiters and salespeople.
Yes, I would agree with that. Well, I would like to thank each of our panelists. I've known these people or the organizations for many years, and they are really, really fantastic organizations. I'll put a plug in for each one of them. They each in their particular industries do some amazing things. And so I think it's great that our students were able to hear from each of you today, talk about your company. Each of these companies, by the way, is one of the leaders in the state of Utah. So those students that are coming out of our university would be, it would be a great place to work for any of these three organizations. So thank you for taking the time today. I really, really appreciate it. And I know our students really got some great information today on what you do and what you're looking for in terms of the skill set and so forth. Great discussion, folks. Thank you very much for your time, and you may get some questions a little bit later on from the folks on LinkedIn. So thank you for making that available also.
Thank you.
And,
thanks, everybody.
Steve, do you want to, since you put this together, do you want to come back in and say any closing remarks to the students? Okay, he was the one that was facilitating the questions coming in. So thanks, everybody. We'll let you go from there.
Thanks.
I just want to thank each of the panel members for joining us today. We appreciate the students also for joining us. It was a great panel.
He was the one that was facilitating the questions coming in. So thanks, everybody.